glad you're here. Imagine feeling small in a world that feels too big. Imagine having dreams that seem far beyond your reach. Now imagine a young boy who didn't start with wealth, genius, or special talent. Only a curious mind and a deep love for learning. That boy was Bill Gates, a name the world would one day associate with innovation and success. Bill Gates was born on October 28, 1955, in Seattle, Washington. His family lived a comfortable middle-class life. Not rich, not poor, just a home filled with support, discipline, and encouragement. His full name, William Henry Gates III, came from his father and grandfather, continuing a family tradition. Bill's father was a tall, serious lawyer who believed in hard work and education. His mother was warm and intelligent, a former teacher who later served on many important boards. Together, they created a home where curiosity was welcomed and learning was part of everyday life. From the time Bill was little, his curiosity stood out. He would stare at objects for minutes, sometimes hours, wondering how they worked. His parents laughed about it, but this curiosity would become one of the greatest strengths of his life. Bill loved reading. He read anything he could find: science, history, law, you name it. His favorite place was the small library in his house, where he could lose himself in books for hours. But school was a different story. Lessons felt too easy, rules felt too strict, and Bill often grew bored. He wasn't a bad student. He was simply a student who needed more. One day, when he was 9 years old, a teacher finally asked him, "Bill, why do you always look so distracted in class?" Bill replied confidently, "Because I already read the book." His parents realized he needed a bigger challenge, so they enrolled him in Lakeside School, a private school that encouraged creative and talented students. And this decision changed everything. At Lakeside, Bill discovered something that would shape the rest of his life: computers. In the late 1960s, computers were huge, expensive machines, nothing like the ones we use today. Very few schools had them, but Lakeside did. And from the moment Bill touched a keyboard, he felt something magical, a spark. He spent hours programming, experimenting, and exploring what these machines could do. Sometimes he skipped class just to stay in the computer room. At first, teachers were frustrated, but eventually they understood. Bill wasn't being lazy. He was discovering a talent that was rare and powerful. At only 13 years old, he wrote his first computer program, a simple tic-tac-toe game where the user could play against the computer. It was his first real step into the world of programming, and he loved every moment of it. At Lakeside, Bill also met Paul Allen, an older student who shared the same passion for computers. Paul was quiet and thoughtful. Bill was energetic and competitive. But together, they made a perfect team. They dreamed of a future where computers would be everywhere, on every desk, in every home. A crazy idea at the time, but they believed in it. When Bill was only 15, he and Paul started their first business. They wrote a program that analyzed traffic patterns, and they earned $20,000, a huge amount for two teenagers. It taught taught Bill an important lesson. Success doesn't come from ideas alone. It comes from turning those ideas into reality. But Bill wasn't all work. He had a playful side. In class, he liked to sit next to girls, not for flirting, but because he believed they were more organized and focused. It helped him develop confidence and social skills. And Bill loved competition. He hated losing. Whether it was a puzzle, a math problem, or a game, he always pushed himself to win. His parents sometimes worried about how much time he spent in front of a computer. One evening, his mother told him, "Bill, you can't spend your whole life at that computer." Bill simply smiled and said, "Why not, Mom? One day computers will change the world, and I want to be part of that." Even as a teenager, Bill had a vision. He didn't just want to use computers, he wanted to shape their future. He and Paul would stay up late, talking about the world they dreamed of. They didn't have the answers yet, but they had the passion. And passion, they believed, could change everything. A life of giving. By the early 2000s, Bill Gates had already achieved what most people only dream of. Microsoft had become a giant, its software powering computers all around the world. And so Bill faced a new question. What should a man do after turning his teenage dream into reality? His answer changed millions of lives. In January 2000, Bill and Melinda created the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. They began with an astonishing $28 billion from Bill's own fortune. Almost overnight, it became the world's most powerful private foundation. Headquartered in Seattle, it expanded to thousands of employees working in more than 130 countries, all united by one mission: to fight the world's biggest inequalities. Their work focused on global health, poverty, education, and sanitation, problems that affect the most vulnerable. By 2025, Bill had personally donated more than $59 billion, all directed through data-driven strategies designed to save the greatest number of lives possible. And the results were extraordinary. Working with global partners like Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, the foundation helped deliver vaccines to over 1 billion children since the year 2000. This effort played a major role in cutting child deaths in poor countries by more than half. They fought diseases that once seemed unbeatable. Malaria kills hundreds of thousands every year. Yet, thanks to over 2 billion mosquito nets funded through the foundation, infections in many regions dropped dramatically. Polio, once widespread, has been reduced by 99% thanks to massive vaccination campaigns and billions invested in cold chain technology. The foundation also supported African farmers through new, drought-resistant seeds, helping 40 million farmers grow more food and improve their lives. When COVID-19 spread across the world, Bill's foundation contributed $1.75 billion to help distribute vaccines to 144 countries through the COVAX program. But Bill didn't stop there. He loved bold ideas, what he called grand challenges. Ideas like toilets that don't need water, satellite systems that monitor crops using AI, and new kinds of vaccines using advanced RNA technology. Ideas that could someday transform life for billions. As time went on, a new threat captured Bill's attention: climate change. For him, It wasn't just an environmental issue. It was the biggest problem humanity had to solve. Through breakthrough energy ventures, he invested billions into revolutionary technologies: nuclear fusion, green hydrogen, carbon capture, and next-generation reactors. His philosophy was simple. Small changes won't save the world. We need moonshots. He also worked on improving education in the United States, funding teacher training programs and new digital learning tools that reached over 100 million students. In 2010, Bill invited his close friend Warren Buffett to join him in launching the Giving Pledge, a promise where billionaires commit to giving away most of their wealth. Today, over 240 of the world's richest people have signed it, shaping a new culture of generosity. Despite his wealth, Bill chose a simple, personal lifestyle. He donates almost all his Microsoft shares, leaves only modest inheritances for his children, and focuses on using his money to help others. He often says, "Money is most useful when it helps those who need it most." Some criticize him, calling his philanthropy too powerful or raising questions about vaccines. But the numbers speak clearly. Between 2000 and 2020, the Gates Foundation's work helped save an estimated 122 million lives. Bill also shares his own lessons. "Success is a lousy teacher," he says. "It tricks smart people into thinking they can't fail." Another favorite quote: "Celebrate success, but learn from failures." A well-known story illustrates his philosophy. A journalist once hesitated when Bill offered to sign a blank check. Bill smiled and said, "That's the secret. Opportunities disappear when you hesitate." His actions and his billions now focus on one idea. Legacy is not measured by how much you keep, but by how much you give. The Big Break and the Birth of Microsoft. By 1974, Bill Gates was still walking through the halls of Harvard University, but his life was about to change forever. Something extraordinary appeared on the cover of Popular Electronics magazine, the Altair 8800, the first personal computer kit that people could buy and build at home. For Bill and his childhood friend Paul Allen, this wasn't just another machine. It was their moment. Paul rushed into Bill's dorm room holding the magazine, eyes wide with excitement. "Bill, this is it," he said. And he meant it. They both believed the same thing. One day, computers would be on every desk and in every home. And maybe this little machine was the beginning. There was just one problem. They didn't own an Altair. So Bill and Paul did something bold. They created a virtual version of the Altair on Harvard's powerful computer system, and spent 8 intense weeks writing a basic programming language for a machine they had never even touched. It was risky. It was crazy. It was brilliant. Then came the legendary moment. Bill picked up the phone and called Ed Roberts, the CEO of MITS, the company behind the Altair. "We have BASIC ready for your computer," Bill said confidently. It was a bluff, but Ed Roberts asked them to fly to Albuquerque for a demo. On the flight, Bill and Paul were still fixing the software. But when they finally presented it, something magical happened. It worked perfectly on the first try. Ed Roberts was impressed and immediately signed a deal. That moment lit the fuse. In April 1975, at only 20 years old, Bill made a life-changing decision. He dropped out of Harvard. His mother was shocked. "Harvard is your future," she told him. Bill answered calmly, "Mom, this is my future. Computers are my passion. I can't miss this chance." And so, Bill and Paul created a small startup called Microsoft. Their early days were far from glamorous. They lived in cheap motels, worked in the heat of Albuquerque, and survived on peanut butter sandwiches. They coded all day, every day, sometimes through the night. But slowly, their work began to spread. Their basic software was adapted for more and more computers, the Commodore PET, the Apple I, and suddenly, demand exploded. By 1977, Microsoft was making over $4 million in revenue. Bill was known for his intensity. He pushed himself and his team relentlessly. When something wasn't good enough, he didn't hide his frustration. But when problems appeared, he often solved them in a single night. His rule was simple: greatness demands your best every day. Then, in 1980, the opportunity of a lifetime arrived. IBM, the biggest computer company in the world, needed an operating system for its new personal computer. Bill moved fast. He bought a simple system called QDOS for $75,000, improved it, renamed it MS-DOS, and licensed it to IBM. And here was the genius move. He didn't sell it to IBM. He licensed it. This meant every company that made IBM-compatible computers also needed Microsoft software. The result? A computing revolution and a massive victory for Microsoft. By 1981, Microsoft had moved to its new headquarters in Redmond. Bill's friend Steve Ballmer joined him, and the company grew at lightning speed. Bill worked endlessly, sometimes sleeping under his desk, to push the company forward. In 1985, Microsoft launched Windows 1.0, a graphical interface inspired by ideas from Apple and Xerox. It wasn't perfect, but Bill believed in constant improvement. Version after version, Windows grew stronger and eventually became the dominant operating system in the world. By 1987, at just 31 years old, Bill Gates became the youngest self-made billionaire in history. Yet even with all his success, he remained cautious. "Success is a lousy teacher," he warned. "It makes smart people think they can't lose." But he didn't stop. He kept pushing, kept building, kept dreaming. The dream he had as a teenager, that computers would someday be everywhere, was finally becoming real. And Microsoft was the company making it happen. Personal life and the challenges behind the success. As Microsoft rose to dominate the world of computing in the 1980s, Bill Gates faced challenges not measured in lines of code or financial charts, but in the complex world of human relationships. Behind the intense work and long nights, Bill was learning how to build something even more difficult than a tech empire: a personal life. In 1987, at a simple Microsoft employee picnic, met someone who would change his life, Melinda French. She was 23, brilliant, confident, with a fresh Duke MBA and a sharp mind that didn't shy away from debate. During a friendly game of Trivial Pursuit, Melinda confronted Bill with a bold remark. "You're being a know-it-all." Most people were intimidated by Bill's intensity. Melinda wasn't, and that caught his attention. Their relationship grew from deep conversations, shared curiosity, and spirited debates. Bill, who once doubted whether marriage fit into his carefully planned life, slowly opened up. After years of reflection and a pros and cons list on his whiteboard, he finally proposed. On January 1st, 1994, Bill and Melinda were married on the Hawaiian island of Lanai. The ceremony was elegant but private, with just 120 guests. Paul Allen, Bill's longtime friend and co-founder, stood proudly as his best man. Family life and raising children. Parenthood brought Bill a new kind of purpose. Their first daughter, Jennifer, was born in 1996. She became a talented equestrian and later pursued healthcare studies at Stanford. Their son, Rory, born 1999, preferred a quieter life, gravitating toward gaming and technology. Their youngest, Phoebe, born 2002, explored interests in fashion, medicine, and social justice. Even though the Gates family lived in the famous lakeside mansion known as Xanadu 2.0, a 66,000 square foot technological wonder, Bill and Melinda insisted on a down-to-earth environment. There were rules. No phones before age 14, weekly allowances, chores, and part-time jobs. Bill often said, "Too much money can steal your motivation. We want our kids to build their own identities." Storms in the empire. But even as the family grew, Microsoft entered one of the biggest legal battles in tech history. Bill's aggressive strategy to win the browser war, bundling Internet Explorer for free with Windows, crushed competitors like Netscape. But it also triggered a massive antitrust lawsuit from the US government in 1998. The trial was long, complex, and intense. Bill's courtroom demeanor, cold, defensive, and frustrated, didn't help public perception. Some painted him as a villain, a ruthless competitor who wanted total control of the tech world. In 2001, Microsoft reached a settlement, avoiding a forced breakup, but accepting years of oversight. Inside Microsoft, Bill's intensity was legendary. He would storm into meetings, point out flaws instantly, and sometimes shout at his engineers. "That's the stupidest idea I've ever heard." Yet he often stayed up all night fixing the problems himself. His close friend Steve Ballmer once shouted during a speech, "Bill is the smartest person I've ever met." And many employees worked with that belief, driving them through 80-hour work weeks. Personal crises and a public divorce. Work had consumed Bill for so long that he admitted he lacked social skills earlier in life. But later, new challenges appeared outside of Microsoft's walls. Rumors of an affair in 2000 and controversial connections to Jeffrey Epstein years later. These strained his marriage and public image. In May 2021, after 27 years together, Bill and Melinda announced their divorce, citing irreconcilable differences. They divided over $76 billion in assets peacefully, later shared her struggles in a memoir. Bill reflected, "Challenges make us stronger." Despite their separation, they continued working together at the foundation, especially on global health campaigns like the fight against polio. A new chapter. In the early 2000s, Bill began turning more of his energy toward philanthropy. He officially stepped back from Microsoft in 2006, leaving Steve Ballmer as CEO. In 2014, he passed the chairman role to Satya Nadella, who would lead Microsoft into a new era. In a speech at Harvard, Bill said, "I was lucky in technology. Now it's time to give back." Over time, he transformed from the fiercely competitive tech warrior of the 80s and 90s to a thoughtful global philanthropist. Through every challenge, one belief guided him: patience is essential to success. Philanthropy and the power of giving. As the world stepped into a new millennium, Bill Gates faced a question bigger than Microsoft, bigger than technology itself. What kind of legacy lasts longer than software? By the year 2000, Microsoft had already fulfilled his childhood dream. Computers were everywhere. The challenge ahead was no longer technical. It was human. And so Bill and Melinda created the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, later renamed the Gates Foundation. They began by donating an incredible $28 billion, making it the most powerful private foundation in the world. From its headquarters in Seattle, the foundation grew into a global force, operating in more than 135 countries, with over 2,000 employees, all driven by one mission: a world where everyone has a fair chance to live a healthy, productive life. By 2024, Bill had personally donated over $60 billion, joined by more than $43 billion from Warren Buffett. Together, they helped fund more humanitarian projects than most governments, transformations that changed the world. The results of their work are breathtaking. Through the Gavi Vaccine Alliance, which Bill co-founded, over 1 billion children received life-saving vaccines since 2000. In poorer countries, the death rate of children under 5 was cut in half. Measles deaths in Africa dropped by 90%. Malaria, still killing hundreds of thousands each year, was pushed back through the distribution of 2 billion mosquito nets and a revival of malaria research that drug companies had abandoned. Polio, once a global threat, saw a 99% drop in cases thanks to massive vaccination programs supported by over $4 billion in funding. Partnerships with organizations like the Global Fund saved tens of millions of lives from AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria. When COVID-19 struck, the foundation contributed $1.75 billion to support the COVAX initiative, helping deliver 1 billion vaccine doses to countries in need. And beyond crises, Bill supported bold, inventive solutions. Toilets that don't need water and turn waste into fertilizer. AI systems that help diagnose diseases. Drought-resistant seeds that helped 40 million African farmers increase their crop yields by up to 50%. These weren't small changes, they were global transformations. The climate challenge. For Bill, climate change is the biggest danger humanity faces. Through breakthrough energy ventures, he committed over $2 billion to revolutionary technologies: fusion reactors, safer nuclear energy, green hydrogen, low-carbon steel, and machines that pull carbon directly from the air. His message is clear. We won't solve climate change with small ideas. We need moonshots. Education and opportunity. In the United States, the foundation expanded opportunities for students through scholarships and support programs, especially for students from underrepresented communities. More than 20,000 scholarships were awarded, and technology tools funded by the foundation reached 100 million students. Around the world, sanitation projects created new systems for the 3.6 billion people who live without proper toilets, turning human waste into energy and usable products. Redefining giving. In 2010, Bill and Warren Buffett launched the Giving Pledge, inviting billionaires to commit to donating the majority of their wealth. Today, more than 240 billionaires have signed, pledging trillions of dollars to global causes. Bill often says, "Money stops being useful after your basic needs are met. Then its only purpose is to help others." Despite earning enormous wealth, his Microsoft dividends alone once reached nearly $250 million a year. Bill chose to donate 99.96% of his shares and limit his children's inheritance to $10 million each. Facing critics and staying focused. Some criticize his influence, calling his approach philanthrocapitalism. Others question his involvement in vaccine initiatives or land investments. But Bill answers calmly. Ignore the noise. Follow the evidence. Independent researchers estimate the foundation's work helped save 122 million lives between 2000 and 2020. Wisdom and a simple life. Bill's favorite lessons often appear in his speeches. Success is a lousy teacher. It makes you think you can't lose. Celebrate your success, but pay attention to your failures. Opportunities disappear when you hesitate. Act boldly. And despite being one of the world's richest individuals, Bill lives simply, flying coach at times, wearing the same sweaters, and driving an electric Taycan to reduce emissions. His home, Xanadu 2.0, may be filled with advanced technology, but Bill remains grounded, focused on one idea. Your true legacy is not the money you make, but the lives you touch. Lessons, habits, and a legacy that lives on. With Microsoft standing as a timeless giant and his philanthropic work shaping the lives of millions, Bill Gates, now 70 years old, embodies a powerful truth. Success doesn't come from one great moment, but from daily habits practiced again and again. His days begin quietly at 7 a.m. in his high-tech home overlooking Lake Washington. The first ritual of every morning is reading 60 to 90 minutes of newspapers and scientific journals. The New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, research on AI, biotechnology, global health, anything that stretches the mind. Bill often says, reading expands your perspective and sharpens your thinking. Afterward, he exercises, tennis when he can, or a session on the treadmill while listening to podcasts. Breakfast is simple: black coffee, fruit, and yogurt. Then his focus shifts entirely to the Gates Foundation. His mornings are filled with conversations with scientists, updates on malaria vaccine trials, and discussions about climate solutions. Bill organizes his time in focused blocks and guards his schedule fiercely to avoid distractions. His superpower? Relentless concentration. A day built on learning and reflection. Afternoons are usually dedicated to analyzing data, Excel models for polio logistics, projections for fusion energy, or progress reports from global partners. Evenings are calmer, intense bridge matches for mental sharpness, family dinners, then more reading. Bill reads around 50 books a year, ranging from world history to physics and big idea nonfiction like Sapiens. He ends his day before midnight, believing that a rested mind is a productive mind. Twice a year, Bill retreats into what he calls Think Week. He disappears to a cabin alone with over 100 papers, prototypes, and tech proposals. These weeks of deep focus famously sparked early ideas for the web browser era and tablet computers. His philosophy is simple: no multitasking, delegate often, and track your time carefully. As he puts it, if you're busy, the solution isn't to cut learning, it's to protect it. Lessons shared with the world. In TED Talks, university speeches, and interviews, Bill has shared timeless advice. 1. Dream big, act step by step. Waiting for the perfect moment is a myth. Start now, fail, adjust, and move forward. 2. Failure is a teacher, not an enemy. Mistakes teach you faster than success ever will. 3. Time is your true wealth. Use it for growth, for people, for curiosity. 4. Curiosity leads to solutions. The world is full of problems, but also full of people who can solve them. 5. Kindness is strength. Compassion isn't soft, it's what holds humanity together. He often summarizes his view of life simply: in the end, your legacy is measured by the lives you improve. A legacy still unfolding. Microsoft reshaped the digital world. The Gates Foundation's resources, now more than $77 billion, helped save over 122 million lives between 2000 and 2020. Polio is almost eradicated. More than 1 billion children received vaccines through GAVI. Breakthrough energy moves humanity toward climate innovations that could define the future. The Giving Pledge inspired over 240 billionaires to commit their wealth to global causes. Even after his 2021 divorce, Bill continued his mission with focus and optimism. Controversies faded, the work remained. His lifestyle stayed simple. No private jet fleets, no luxury showmanship. Just an electric car, a few favorite sweaters, and a passion for solving problems. From a curious teenager at Lakeside School to one of the most influential thinkers of our age, Bill Gates shows that your beginnings do not define your future. What matters is your vision, your courage to take risks, your ability to rise after setbacks, and your willingness to give more than you take. And as he often reminds listeners, success isn't about the fortune you build, it's about the lives you touch. Bill's story may be long, but it isn't finished. Your story, however, your chapter, starts now. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to share it with someone who might like it too.